sorry, but I'm pretty darn excited to be here tonight. Are you guys pretty darn excited to be here tonight? Okay, I'm glad, because if I was the only one, it'd be a little embarrassing. So like Cole said earlier, my name is Jen. I used to work at Gateway a really long time ago. I'm super stoked that I get to talk to you guys tonight. And I'm not going to do much of an introduction because, to be honest, I'm really gifted at talking, and I have a limited amount of time. So are you cool if I get right into it? Awesome. I'm going to start by telling you guys a story. And this story is about a guy, his name is William Booth. William Booth lived in the early 1800s, and he was kind of like an assistant pastor or associate pastor. He worked at this church where there was a lead pastor as part of it because he was in the beginning of his career. And one Sunday, he decided he was going to be really awesome and go out, and he grabbed a group of boys who lived in this place in London called the slums. Have anyone heard of the slums before? So it's kind of like the poor area of town. So these boys came into this church service. William Booth brought them along, and their clothes were kind of torn up. They didn't really have, great hygiene. Their hair was a mess. They probably swore a lot. They were really rough around the edges. But William brought them in, and they sat down, and the service happened. And at the end of the service, the main pastor turned to William Booth and said, "Come here a minute, I got to talk to you." The pastor says to William Booth, "I need you not to ever bring those boys again. And if you decide to bring those boys, then I want you to sit them in the back of the church or in the back room where they can't be heard or seen or, disrupt the flow." Well, the main pastor walked away, and William kind of looked at him in awe. And in the pit of his stomach got this big boulder. And immediately he goes, this isn't right. You see, it was at that moment he had a realization that his church had gotten to the point where it became too respectable. And what does that mean? It means that when people came to church, they put all their fanciest clothes on, they made their hair up nice, they, sprayed the perfume on and made sure that they walked with a swagger on the way in, but they did it for everyone else in the room. They wanted to get the respect of the person standing next to them, and they weren't doing it for the respect of God. And that really bugged William, deep down in his soul. So he decided he was going to do something different. William decided that after he did his work, he would go out, and at night, and this was around 10 p.m., he would go out to the hospitals and the poorer areas of town, and he would hang out with the homeless and sit with the sick and the dying and spend time with them. He would feed the hungry and, give a blanket or some extra clothes to the poor. And he's like, I'm going to preach the gospel this way. I'm going to tell people about Jesus like this. Well, a few weeks went by, and William noticed that he wasn't really getting anywhere. A few more weeks went by, and he's like, not a single person is hearing a word that I have to say about my amazing Savior. So he sat down with his wife, Catherine, and said, "Catherine, I don't understand." And she's like, "Well, maybe they're hungry, and it's so hungry that, when you get your stomach, literally nothing else in the world matters. And you're like, if I don't get a bite of food in me right now, I might implode. Maybe that's what's happening. So why don't we go and feed them, and then we'll tell them about Jesus." So they went out, and for a few weeks, they started to feed the hungry first and clothe the cold and give blankets to those and just be there with the sick and the dying and slowly start to talk about Jesus as their human needs were met. And lo and behold, people started to get to know Jesus that way. Well, as they continued to do this, they decided to make it an organization because they realized that this is how church should be. We should be there for people. We should meet them face to face where they're at and then tell them the great news about Jesus Christ. So they called this the Christian Mission. And the Christian Mission went on for a few years. And believe it or not, you actually know this organization. Majority of you. They changed their name, though. Who here has heard of the Salvation Army? So this was the very true beginnings of the Salvation Army. It started out because there was a pastor who saw a need, and he didn't like the way that things were being done, and so he made a change. So the first thing I want to do, now that I've talked to you about a dude in the 1800s, which many of you are like, oh, whoopee, we're going to go a little bit further back, and we're going to look at the book of James in the Bible. So the verses that I'd like to look at is James chapter 2, verses 2 to 4. For example, suppose someone comes into your meetings dressed in fancy clothes and expensive jewelry, and another comes in who is poor and dressed in dirty clothes. If you give special attention and a good seat to the rich person, but you say to the poor one, you can stand over there, or else sit on the floor, well, doesn't that discrimination show that your judgments are guided by evil motives? Does that sound like a familiar story? It's almost word for what happened in the Salvation Army. Obviously, William Booth, at one point or another, had picked up a Bible and said, this is what, we're told that church should be for everyone at all times. You see, William kind of came to that conclusion that his church, like I said, was too respectable. It had turned into what I'd like to call an art gallery for beautiful people. You went to church and you dressed up and you were in your best, not because you were there to serve God or to worship God, but you were there to show others that you were there. And that was the purpose behind it. And he hated that. Like that he believed deep down in his gut that the church was not a viewing gallery, but a hospital for people who are sick. Now, not an actual hospital. It's not like he brought in sick people to the church to heal them. But the purpose was that people came to church exactly as they were and weren't judged because of how their clothing was, or if they hadn't had a meal in a few days, or if they hadn't had a shower. Church should be a place where you come in and you feel warm and accepted and loved. Now that we've gone way farther back, we're going to break it back into modern day. And I want to show you a picture of a guy named Rick. I maybe will show you a picture of a guy named Rick. Still possibly? We're not showing a picture of a guy named Rick. So there's a guy named Rick. Oh, look behind me. Is there the first picture of Rick? There it is. I can't see it back there, so it's totally, that's what's happening. So this is my buddy Rick. Rick lives in California. Not actually my buddy. I'm sorry I lied. And when I first looked at this picture of Rick, I want everyone to just take a minute and look at Rick. And I'm going to be the one that says out loud kind of what I'm thinking. Is that okay? But Rick doesn't look really well groomed. His clothes don't really fit that well. In fact, I think it's a very faded yellow vest. But the whole persona, I probably think he was a little worse for wear. Does everyone kind of got the same thought process? Am I the only one? Well, the next picture of Rick. This next picture of Rick is actually Rick on the red carpet, because Rick is a multi-million-dollar record producer. You can see the beard's still there. He put on a nicer jacket. But you see, when they asked Rick, they go, Rick, you live in this great house, you drive a decent car, and here you are wearing random kind of looks like, secondhand clothing and tattered, and it looks like it's old and hasn't been washed. Why? And he's like, I don't care. You see, for Rick, it's about something more than just what he wears. It's about the music that he produces. What really drives Rick is when he puts his heart and his soul into working with artists and bands and producing an amazing album. And that's what really drives him. And the similarity for us is the fact that we should be looking and work and just giving our heart and soul into getting to know people. And when we come to church, we should be there, heart and soul and mind, and at church just ready to do what God needs us to do and not paying attention necessarily to what everyone else is looking like on the outside. Someone who does this really well. His name is Jesus. Do you know him? Jesus is a pretty amazing fellow if you don't. But he personifies exactly how we as Christians should try to be. I mean, his character, the way he loved on people was pretty incredible. So when Jesus started his ministry, he was just shy of 30 years old. So the first thing he had to do is he had to go and grab 12 guys to make up his disciples. And as he went and grabbed these 12 guys, you would think that, like, these guys, their job was to learn from Jesus and emulate him and soak in all of his knowledge and wisdom so that when it was time for Jesus to go, that they could continue on his work. So you'd think that Jesus's, like, number one person would be, some kind of educator or someone who is high in society and good with words, a teacher or a politician, or someone who had been to school for years and years and years. He wasn't really like that. Jesus decided to get really awesome, ordinary dudes. And some of them were a little less than ordinary. You see, back in those days, probably the worst job you could have was a tax collector. Does anyone know what a tax collector would probably do? Collect taxes. I know, it's mind-blowing. Collect taxes, what? So his job, the tax collector, was on behalf of the government to collect taxes for the government. And there was a lot of Romans who worked as tax collectors, and they really actually didn't want to do the collecting. So what they did is they hired Jewish tax collectors to collect for them. And they would just, ride the high train and be like, yes, I'm not a tax collector. I have people who do that for me. But at the bottom of the tax collector bracket was a guy named Matthew. And Matthew didn't have many friends. In fact, most of Matthew's friends were tax collectors and other people of similar occupations. So we're going to read one more scripture and kind of see how this all went down with Jesus and Matthew. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. Note, it is extremely impressive that Matthew just followed him. There must have been something pretty magnetic about Jesus for someone to be like, "Follow me." Okay. "Oh, what's your name?" Like, there was no introduction. It was literally just, "Follow me. Let's go." While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, so obviously either Jesus just walked in or Matthew invited him, many tax collectors and sinners came to eat with him and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they asked the disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" So another side note, a Pharisee, these guys were a pretty annoying bunch of dudes. The Pharisees were like the Jewish high priests who knew it all. They could tell you the 613 commandments of the Old Testament, backwards, forwards, upwards, downwards, and how you're doing them wrong. And that was their goal with Jesus. In fact, they all got together and say, "Do not leave him alone. Have a group of you with their eyes on him at all times, because we have to catch him breaking the law." That was their goal. So what they were doing here is saying, all right, you call yourself a teacher, Jesus, and you call yourself pretty respectable, but you're hanging out with these lowlifes. You're hanging out with tax collectors and sinners. Something's going on here. You're not telling the truth. Well, of course, they don't have the guts to ask Jesus, so they ask his disciples. But on hearing this, Jesus said, "It's not for the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but the sinners." First of all, I love that Jesus just interjected. It's like, excuse me. If you're going to ask me a question, let me answer it for you. Jesus was really clear. And in his whole ministry, if you look throughout the New Testament, Jesus did not go and seek people who felt themselves righteous and above all and really awesome and had it all together. Who did Jesus go and seek? He went and sought after the people who were hurting and needed healing. Those are the people that needed his love, and he wanted to meet them exactly where he was. He didn't say to them, you have to come to me. A lot of the times Jesus went to them. He stopped where he was, he met them, he talked to them, had a conversation. What an amazing example of simply loving someone. So, how do we do this? I mean, in this day and age, it's not like we necessarily are against tax collectors. I mean, we're not happy about them. But it's not like we get angry and dissatisfied with them and we shun them. And no, it's not like that. But I challenge you to think for a moment. How often do you, in school or at work, for those of you who have jobs, kind of hang out with the cool kids or your group of friends, and you don't really talk to the ones over there who are sitting by themselves? How often do we do that? Why do we do that? Well, I think that there are two things that stand in our way as Christians when it comes time to us acting out the love of God. The number one thing is our comfort zone. We have a really great little circle. Every single one of us has this. It's about this big. I usually use arm spans for measurement. It's about an arm span around us. And as we step to the side, this is a comfort zone. Some may call it a comfort bubble. But our comfort zones are what stops us from reaching out to someone where they're at. Because a lot of the times, we get in our own head and we go, well, what if they make fun of me? What if I invite them to something and they say no? Like, what if I get humiliated in front of my friends? Well, the thing is our comfort zones, that bubble that we have around us, actually defines the limitations of our faith, because it actually takes a step of faith to go outside of them. So if there's that person, that young guy or that girl sitting at the table by themselves, it is uncomfortable for you to leave your friend group and walk over here and go, oh my goodness, make this not be awkward. But it's a step of faith. It's a leap of faith that we have to take. I like to refer to it as the bumpers in the bowling alley of life. Who here uses bumpers when they go bowling? Please don't let me be the only hand up. Okay, there's like 3 more. Thanks, guys. Bumpers are great because you're guaranteed to hit the pins at the end of the bowling alley, aren't you? Like, I literally just feel, I'm like, okay, let's see how many points I can get. Bumpers are awesome. Bumpers are comfortable. See what I'm doing here? But when you take the bumpers away, all of a sudden there's a chance for a gutter ball, and no one wants to bowl a gutter ball. It's embarrassing, especially when you're 5-pin bowling and you've done a trick shot. But what if, that feeling of when you bowl the ball and there's no bumpers and you get a strike, feels pretty amazing. What if you leave your friend zone and you step out in faith and you sit down and you talk to that person, and all of a sudden you realize that you have some awesome things in common? What if you invite that friend to church, the one that you've been thinking about inviting for the past few years but haven't really invited them because you don't know if they'll say no, and if they say no, they'll never be your friend again, and then you will have one less friend on Facebook. But what if they said yes? And honestly, people, if someone says no and then unfriends you because you're inviting them to church, I'm thinking they're not really your friend. Because church is a part of who you are. And you'd want to share that with them. So the second thing that I think that stops us from acting out God's love is something I like to call, somebody else will do it. Well, it's fine. There's like 3 people there. They'll go talk to her. I don't have to have that awkward conversation. Like, what are we going to talk about? Someone else will do it. Did you know that this is actually a studied scientific social phenomenon? It's called the bystander effect, and they've actually done many studies on this. It's a very unfortunate fact. And the bystander effect is essentially that if someone is hurt, so say there's a victim, there is a less chance of them being helped the more people there are around. Why? Someone else will do it. In fact, the victim has a better chance if there is just one person standing near them for them to be helped than if there was 10 people standing near them or 50. And they've studied this. And I won't ask you to put your hand up, but I want you to think honestly and be honest with yourself. Have you ever said someone else will do it? Maybe your pastor has come up on stage at church and said, hey, we really need some extra help greeting this Sunday, or we really need some people to hang out with the youth or with the children's ministry. And you're sitting there going, well, there's at least 20 other people in my row. Someone else will do it. Have you had that before? I've done it before. And again, if I'm the only one, my feelings are a little hurt. But at the end of the day, we have this mentality that someone else will do it. And if every single person in a row of 20 says someone else will do it, who does it? Nobody. Who has the conversation with the girl at the table? Nobody. Those are the two things that I think we really need to kind of get over. We need to get over ourselves a little bit. To kind of bring it back to the Salvation Army that I started with, they have a motto that I absolutely love. Like I love it. And it's really simple. They have it actually on their uniforms. If you've seen the uniform, there's an S here and an S here. And it stands for saved to serve and serve to save. Guys, as Christians, we have found this amazing grace in Jesus Christ. We have found this unbelievable love and this relationship that I will tell you that I would not exchange for the world. Why wouldn't we want other people to feel that way? And I don't mean that you have to be going out and banging your Bible on people's lockers and saying, you must know the Lord. If you're called to do that, just be careful. But what I am saying is maybe we can do little acts of faith, what I call faith in action, or God's love in action, in order to kind of change the way that people see this God fellow. I mean, if people know you're a Christian and you're doing the exact same thing as them, are you any different than them? No. I mean, if you're saying the same words or gossiping the same way or ignoring the same person at the table, there's nothing special. But what if we took the step outside of our comfort zones? What if we stopped saying someone else will do it, but I'm going to do it, and actually put our faith, our steps of faith, our leaps of our faith into action? Maybe it means actually talking to the girl at that table and having that conversation. Maybe it means, during the week when you're riding the bus to school, instead of sitting there with your headphones in and on your phone and praying that no one will talk to you. I've done it. Maybe we take the earphones out. Maybe we have a conversation. It's only a 20-minute bus ride and you get to leave at the end. What if we smiled a little more? What if we actually told people how awesome they are? These are small things that we can do that can actually show people that God's love is amazing. Because soon people are going to ask you, why are you happy all the time? What's different? And you can say, so I know this guy named Jesus, and he's pretty swell. What about Sunday mornings at church? I mean, for a lot of us, Sunday mornings, we come to church, we sit down, we worship, we listen to the speaker, and we go home. Oh, and there might be a coffee in there. But what if on a Sunday morning, we took that saved to serve seriously and said, you know what? This morning, I'm going to be that massive smiling face that people see when they come in the doors so that they know I'm ecstatic for them to be at church on Sunday. Like so excited. Maybe not like freaky excited, but still really excited. Or maybe you're deciding, you know what? I'm going to go hang out with the little kids in Sunday school. Or I think they call it the Gateway Kids here. I think they call it. I used to work there. Gateway Kids. And maybe you're there and a parent comes in with her 2 kids for the first time and she sees how excited you are to work with her kids. Maybe it's on a Sunday morning, not just chilling with your friends in the front row of the church service, but going and talking to not 1, 2, but maybe 3 new people. Just saying hi. I'm just saying there's little things that we can do, guys, to walk out our steps of faith, to act out this amazing love that God gives us. And the more he pours into you, the more we should be able to splash onto others as we take those leaps and actually reach out into their lives. It's a pretty incredible thing. So that's my challenge for you today, is I want you to not just this week or this weekend, but I want you to step out of your comfort zone. Just give it a try, just for me. I'm always watching. Not really. It's kind of creepy, isn't it? But I challenge you. Just take the leap of faith. It could just be a small thing at a time, opening a door, saying hi to someone, buying someone a coffee. I know you can do it. All right, so that's all I got for you, but I'd love to end in prayer. Are you okay if I pray with you? More excited. All right, I'm a big fan of standing and praying, so if we could all stand. Fantastic. God, we want to thank you so much for bringing us together tonight, for allowing us to come and hang out with each other, have a great time, and hear your word. And God, I just pray that as we continue to fellowship and hang out with each other tonight, Lord, and try new things, I pray that you give us all the courage and the strength that we need to take that leap of faith. Knowing that at the end of the day, that you will be there and you have our back, and it's okay if we get let down or rejected, because at the end of the day, at least we know. And God, I pray that as we go about our week coming forward, that we start to talk to new people, that we start to take this love that you have given us and just spread it all around, because we want everyone to know this amazing grace that we've found. Lord, I ask that as everyone makes their way out tonight, that you just give them safe journeys wherever they may be headed, and keep them safe. Everyone says...